Hyrule has seen many different wars throughout the ages, but there was one that almost managed to destroy the entire world of light. We all know that a dark tribe rose up after it was known that something called the Triforce existed, and many dark entities tried their ways to get and capture this sacred power of the goddesses. One tribe, a large group of people, bonded together to take over the sacred realm. It's not really known who these beings were, but we can go over and discuss some things in this video regarding the ancestry of these beings, as long ago this dark tribe called the Dark Interlopers were stopped by the forces of light, and as a punishment were banished to a darker existing realm, a dark world acting as their prison that is now known as the Twilight realm. The meaning of an interloper is intruder, someone that is not allowed to be in a place yet is still there, or someone that betrayed someone else. The betrayal comes closest to this aspect of the Twilight. It was incredibly cruel as a punishment, but at the same time, it was also a death sentence. What do I mean exactly with that? Well, remember Ocarina of Time with the Shadow Temple, and how the royal family of Hyrule, knowing that whatever was taking place there was not something they were proud of. The Twilight Realm is what the Shadow Temple used to be in forms of a large prison. Bongo Bongo, the boss of the Shadow Temple that I spoke about in my Sacred Hoverboots video, is not exactly a living creature. He's an undead spirit that was punished for his dark crimes during the Hyrulean Civil War that took place as the backstory of Ocarina of Time. Impa, the Shadow Sage, was the one that sealed him away during the 7 years of Link's little waiting game. The reason why Bongo Bongo was the way he was simply because of his anger towards the royal family of Hyrule. He was messing around with dark magic, or shall we say, he was using his dark life force to create forbidden items. After Impa realizing that he was one of the many dark mages that did things he wasn't allowed to, she locked him up, sealing him away in the bottom of the well, where his house once stood. When Ganondorf took over and made Hyrule into a large dark world, adult Link found Bongo Bongo again, but much stronger than he was ever before, and attacked Sheikah, as Bongo Bongo remembered that he was once part of the Sheikah tribe, the ancient tribe that protected the royal family for centuries, but not realizing that it was secretly the princess in disguise. Now the reason why I'm explaining this story is the fact that this entire ideology happened much later in the timeline as the backstory for Twilight Princess with the Dark Interlopers. The Twilight Realm is not exactly a realm like you think it is. It's acting like the underworld, or shall we say the realm of the dead. As the Arbiter Grounds was the prison for many different creatures to be executed there, or to be imprisoned forever, these sacred grounds were protected by a large Colosseum structure, a structure that seems to be of Hylian origin, or Greek origin. As I compared Bongo Bongo with the Greek god Hades, this all falls into place in some sort of way. But there's obviously a lot more than that just going on. The Twilight Palace, ruled by the fake King Zant, turned all the civilians of the realm into a much darker version of themselves. Yet at the same time, he also created the people of Hyrule into light spirits. And as you see, here we go back again to the spiritual theme that I mentioned earlier. The Twilight Realm acts obviously as the reversed version or mirrored version of Hyrule. The realm of light, the living against the dead, the Twilight Realm. But if Bongo was an actual Sheikah member living in Kakariko village, the village where in most Zelda games the Sheikah originate from, was he also at that point a dark interloper? When looking at the Twilight Palace itself, we see tons of clues that could tell us about the origin of not only the Twilight, but their ancestors. The architecture has all kinds of cool colors, from red to light to blue to black to grey and all kinds of different things. But it's not the colors that shape this place, it's mostly all the symbols that we can find throughout it. The strongest weapon, created by the interlopers, called the Fused Shadow, which feels exactly like Bongo Bongo's experimental item, the Eye of Truth or the Lens of Truth, has an eye on the back of the mask, cleverly hidden and barely seen throughout the game. The Throne of Zant also has an eye on it, which is very interesting, but also the eye of Majora's Mask can clearly be seen on the view shadow. Now what is strange to me is that I always felt that the Twilight were originated from the Gerudo tribe. The symbols on Zant's clothing and even his red hair are clear indications of the Gerudo. However, there are some things that I've missed during my own gameplay many years ago, and through research I discovered some more clues that might say two things: that the bad Gerudo fighting alongside Ganondorf were the ones seen slain and being undead in the Arbiter grounds, but also that even the Sheikah took the side of the darkness, fought and lost against the forces of light. Zant's attire gives away a mixture of both Gerudo and Sheikah. His chest has clearly the red ruby that only the Gerudo used to wear during Ocarina of Time. The red ruby is important as it shows the high nobility of someone in the Gerudo family, and all the statues of the Gerudo seem to imply this part of the worshipping, and if you look all around the throne room, the snakes can clearly be seen that the Gerudo used to worship. As Midna is the Princess of Twilight, she is the opposite to the Princess of Light, Zelda. So we can definitely say that Zant is the dark version of Ganondorf, with Ganondorf being the evil Gerudo from the light world. The Gerudo symbol on Zant's attire could mean two possible things: that it's a symbol of his ancestors, or it's showing his allegiance to the Dark Lord. But here is when the Sheikah part comes in that makes this all the more confusing. The Sheikah are actually known as the Shadow Folk, and they have always been in the shadows. As they act like ninjas, they are also seen by everyone else as capable magic wielders, gaining knowledge and knowing everything about the ancient past of Hyrule. They are also the ones in contact with the Uka, something that a lot of us seem to constantly forget. If the Sheikah turned rogue or evil, they would most certainly be the most biggest candidate when it comes down to be the Twilight and not the Gerudo. As the eye symbol is shown on Zant's throne and even on the mask itself created by these interlopers, one could for sure believe this theory. But there's a lot more going on. Kakariko village, the one where all the Sheikah originate from, not to be confused with the ancient village, that has a different meaning, shows us Renando, the chief of the village, or shaman if you will, and once you start looking at his attire, you'll notice a very familiar detail. This detail are his sleeves. They are the same as Zant's. This is important as it shows not only a Hylian connection, but Renando seems to live in the village where the Sheikah used to come from. And the daughter of Renando, Ludor is her name, has on her back a Sheikah symbol, completing the attire, which is highly likely Sheikah clothing. Another thing I would like to point out is the fortune teller Madame Fernandi and her attire, as she has the power of future sight and fortune telling, and even has red eyes. She's another strange character through the series. She even has the balls to say, "The fates swirl about you," which is not suspicious at all. I see through you, lady, I see through you. The entire Twilight Palace seems to have a large symbol sparkling that has the shape of a circle, but the circle has a line flowing down, almost to show that this line is the tear of the Sheikah symbol, and the circle is the Sheikah eye, but enormously futuristic compared to Hyrule. As I was digging through the Creating a Champion book, I noticed a few lines that corresponded to me with this particular video. This is about the backstory of Breath of the Wild, so here it is. Reconciliation. In the face of this unorthodox crisis, King Rome made the decision to ally and work with the Sheikah once again. The battles between the people had faded into legend, and there were no longer those who felt that the Sheikah posed a threat. Even then, peace between them was a significant event and was only possible due to the peaceful group of Sheikah whose descendants remain in Kakariko village, and to King Rome's political prowess. The Sheikah divided. 10,000 years ago, the kingdom of Hyrule reached an advanced level of civilization, thanks in no small part to the technological prowess of the Sheikah. The Sheikah have worked from the shadows to support Hyrule's royal family since the era of myth, and the contributions have been significant. Their technology was key in helping the chosen hero and the princess seal Ganon away 10,000 years in the past and usher in an age of peace, but the king of Hyrule at the time began to fear and doubt the Sheikah. He became possessed by thoughts of an imagined Sheikah betrayal. He issued an order to abolish technology and began to oppress the Sheikah. The Sheikah's laboratories were closed, research was prohibited, and data was destroyed. Their best researchers were expelled from the kingdom and monitored. Any Sheikah who dared oppose this order was met with severe punishment, including imprisonment. Now, this line is what is important to me. The battles between their people had faded into legend, and there were no longer those who felt that the Sheikah posed a threat. Now, if this is true and not some sort of strange mistranslation, it can for sure explain that a long time ago, the Sheikah could have been the interlopers at one point, and that similar rebellions have happened throughout the ages. But the last now knowing one are the evil Yiga clan that support Ganon only, as they felt betrayed for what the Hylian family did to them. To me, this explains very heavily who the interlopers used to be and why the ancient village of Twilight Princess was called the Old Kakariko village. The Legend of Zelda does have something funny going on that Nintendo loves to do, which is creating an abandoned or an attacked village with always having one survivor being alive and left in that particular town. These towns used to be called Kosuto. Kosuto translates to first, the first village of something. Kakariko village came a little later and it is more of a play word, but Kosuto, a new Kosuto, exists in the adventure of Link, so we can safely say that this is the same thing. As the Sheikah and the Gerudo once had a thirst for power, just like what happened in Breath of the Wild with the Yiga, the Hyrule royal family made the choice after stopping them, the interlopers, to banish anyone choosing the side of Ganondorf to the Shadow Realm or Twilight Realm. Now the only question remains though, is if the banishment wasn't an actual banishment but more of an execution, if the Twilight Realm is considered to be the underworld of dark spirits, rather than a living, lively realm of its own. Another thing to mention is how the Majora's Mask is shown to be on Midna's helmet and makes the Twilight even more confusing. As it is said that the world of Termina is nothing more than heaven, when the spirit of Link slowly turns into the hero Shade, which interesting enough, Shade means shadow as well. How can Midna have that same eye on her helmet? This is not just a coincidence, as it is implied in Majora's Mask by the Happy Mask salesman that long ago a dark tribe used this mask for the hexing rituals, which means that this mask was created by the dark interlopers as well. It cannot be a coincidence if Majora's Mask in the timeline was just before Twilight Princess and that they are masks. The downfall to this theory that these dark tribes are all the same, however, falls apart where we can find the concept art of Ganondorf with the mask on his chest, showing us that this idea has been changed all the time, and that the helmet of Midna is nothing more than the reference to the game Majora's Mask to put us off track. But if it's not a reference, then what it could imply is that Termina and the Twilight Realm are both the same thing, but the difference these realms have is that we saw through Link's transformation of the corruption of Hyrule, creating a twisted world that doesn't even exist. Kind of like how in many Lovecraftian movies, there are dimensions in dimensions of dimensions. But it's all playing in the mind of the person that's going through it, which could create a ton of worlds that makes no sense, like dreams or nightmares do. Still, we have to realize that the Twilight are not good people. They weren't banished to the realm for nothing. Their evil deeds in the past made that happen. As Zant is the only one still feeling extremely emotionally attached to become their leader and taking the side of evil, Ganondorf felt that his life force was the strongest of all the Twilight and possessed him in a way. Hatred and malice, which is the dark life force of spiritual energy, fuels Ganon to the point that he can manipulate someone's ways in life. Ganon doesn't care about who or what is fighting alongside him, all he wants is to conquer everything and create his own dark world. Majora's Mask is another entity that just wants to consume the world of Termina, as in not just destroying it, but eating its life force, as that is what drives the demon. The entire existence for the Twilight to be the Sheikah rather than being the Gerudo makes the most sense to me, but I don't want to exclude the many Gerudo symbols we see around Zend and the palace. As myself, however, always felt that the Gerudo escaping to a different part of the desert felt weak and kinda awkward, but the lore says that they did. The Shadow Temple also vanished from the lore, but it is very safe to assume that Bongo did destroy the seal in the future underneath the bottom of the well 7 years after young Link won Zelda, and that his life force is now also one of the many Twilight. Or he might even have been the king of the Twilight that was too greedy for power. The Shadow Beasts, or the Twilight Transformed, look very similar to Bongo, and the dot in the middle could easily have been resembling an eye. And Bongo is also called Shadow Beast, which might just be a coincidence. Till this day, the Sheikah are the closest ancestors to the Twilight for me. While I don't like to say it, as I always believed the Gerudo were the ones instead, as they were known to take the side of evil because of Ganondorf, but as the lore explained as they escaped, there is no option left other than the Sheikah. The palace itself, filled with its riddles, will for always make us wonder who they were.